Hey, Soul Stories fam! We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Now stay with us. The story begins. The autumn evening draped Union Station in a soft golden hue, a warm light that blurred the edges of everything like a honey gold movie filter. A chilly breeze slipped through the automatic glass doors, carrying the scent of cinnamon from the pretzel stand, roasted coffee from Starbucks, and faint steam from the train bulletin venting below. Amara Levy stood beside column number 14, fingers tightening around the worn strap of her tote bag, the hem of her cream cardigan fluttering in the draft. She was 27, pretty in that effortless way, soft curls tied low, naturally pink lips, warm brown eyes now trembling from tension. A long day at the library had drained her to the bone, and all she wanted was to go home, throw on sweatpants, make a cup of cocoa, and continue the novel waiting for her. But no, life had a habit of not leaving good women alone. Oh, look who it is! The familiar voice froze her. Caleb Rowan, her ex, handsome in that cold Ivy League way, expensive suit tailored like it was molded onto him. Beside him stood Serena Vale, platinum blonde hair, body-hugging dress, Louboutin heels tapping sharply on the marble floor. Serena looked at Amara the way someone looked at an outdated product. Caleb's smile was proud, smug, the kind only petty rich men wore. "Still taking the train?" Caleb said, loud enough for a few people to turn their heads. "Cute. Still living in that shoebox apartment in Brooklyn?" Serena let out a sharp laugh, the sound slicing like a blade. "If I lived like you, I'd disappear from New York entirely just to spare myself the embarrassment." Amara's cheeks burned. She felt dozens of eyes on her, but no one stepped in. This was New York. Everyone had their own business, and free drama was always welcome. Caleb crossed his arms, tilting his head with condescension. "Amara, you always thought you were good, kind, right? But the truth is, you're poor, you're small, and you don't know your place." He said it calmly, as if he were talking about the weather. A mix of humiliation, anger, and heartbreak surged up from Amara's chest. She inhaled deeply, fighting to stay composed. "Caleb, that's enough. You should thank me," Caleb cut in. "I tried to pull you out of that low-class life, but you chose to stay a kind little poor girl. Adorable, really." The station went quiet again. Darkness seemed to swallow her whole. Her hands shook. Her heartbeat thudded painfully. She refused to cry in front of him. No, never. She needed to get out. She needed an exit that wasn't pathetic, something strong, beautiful. Then she saw him. The golden light hit his slightly messy black hair, highlighting a jawline as sharp as sculpture. He wore a charcoal long coat, tailored trousers, and polished black Chelsea boots. One glance was enough to know he wasn't the type who blended into crowds. He was reading something on his phone, head tilted, focused, a little aloof, like a man who stepped off a GQ cover but didn't want the attention. Amara's heart raced. A crazy idea struck. She walked toward him quickly, her boots tapping across the tiles. He lifted his gaze, ash-gray eyes deep and sharp, making her nearly forget what she'd meant to say. Amara leaned in, close enough to catch his scent, soft musk, a hint of cedar, and that clean, crisp aroma of autumn. She whispered, voice tight but resolute, "Please, pretend to hold me for a few seconds." The man slowly lowered his phone, as if analyzing every word she just said. 2 seconds of silence, and then he stood. He was a full head taller, solid build, shoulders broad enough to block a storm. No questions, no hesitation, no mocking smile. He simply did the one thing she needed most. Amara was pulled into a wide, firm, breathtakingly warm embrace. She heard his deep breath above her ear. His chest brushed against her with each inhale. His hand tightened around her waist, not gripping, but saying, "I'm here. You're safe." And the world stopped. Caleb stared, stunned. Serena's jaw dropped. The man spoke in a warm, low voice, loud enough for the entire area to hear. "Baby, I'm late." Union Station froze. Someone whistled, others smiled knowingly. A few people even started recording. Caleb went pale, and Amara, she felt protected, lifted, seen. For the first time in months, she didn't feel small. She looked up, drawn into those gray eyes watching her with lethal calm. He leaned slightly, lips moving just for her. "Let me handle this." She had no idea who he was, no clue why he chose to help, but his arms were steady, safe, warm, and addictive. A million women would kill to be in her place. Caleb stammered, What is this? You have a new boyfriend?" The stranger didn't let her speak. He placed a hand on her back and shifted to shield her, a natural, possessive gesture. "We're leaving." His voice was low, deep, smooth as dark velvet. Caleb choked on words. Serena tugged his arm, whispering, "Caleb, let's go. He looks like the kind of man who could buy this entire station." No one in the crowd knew, and probably would never guess, that a Marcus Hale, the man holding a lonely girl at Union Station, was one of the most powerful men in New York, the owner of the Dominion real estate empire, the man the media called the Phantom Billionaire. The nickname was born from the fact that he was never seen with any woman. And tonight he broke that rule, for a girl at Union Station, for Amara Levy. And fate began at that moment. Marcus didn't say a word as he placed his large, warm, steady hand on Amara's back, guiding her through the crowd still buzzing from the perfectly staged arms around the waist, babe honey display they had just pulled off. Now, Union Station seemed to slow down every time they passed a group of passengers. People turned to stare, half curious, half admiring, half daydreaming. A tall, impossibly handsome man was leading a trembling girl out of the eye of a storm. It looked like the closing scene of a blockbuster rom-com. Marcus led her to a quiet corridor near an abandoned waiting lounge, where only the hum of ventilation and the flickering streaks of blue, gold, and silver from passing trains danced across the walls. Once they arrived, he released her immediately, as if afraid his touch might frighten her further. Amara felt cold instantly when the distance grew between them. She hugged her tote bag against her chest, trying to steady the wild heartbeat thrashing inside her like a panicked horse. He was beautiful. The thought burst out like a reflex. She hated herself for thinking it right now, but his eyes beneath the station lights looked like the surface of a moonlit lake, sharp, still, cold yet deep. Amara lifted her gaze, forcing herself to say something. Thank you," she murmured, voice trembling. "I don't even know what to think anymore. In that moment, I needed—" Her voice caught. God, how was she supposed to say this without sounding ridiculous? Marcus tilted his head slightly, his brows drawing together, but gently. No judgment, no impatience. "You don't have to explain anything." His voice was low and smooth, warm and resonant like a cello played in a quiet room. Amara stared at the floor, fingers tightening around her tote strap. "I shouldn't have dragged a stranger into my mess," she whispered. Marcus responded without a heartbeat's delay. "I'm not the kind of man anyone drags anywhere." Then softer, "But I don't walk away from someone who's hurting right in front of me." Amara's chest tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to her, especially not a man like him. She bit her lip, her voice barely audible. What? What do you do for a living? You seem used to saving strangers." Marcus's mouth tilted in the faintest smile, rare but devastating enough to send her heart into a 2x beat mode. "I don't save anyone," he said. "I just recognize when someone's about to sink." A streak of blue light from a passing train swept across his face, highlighting the straight bridge of his nose, his long lashes, and that sharp, sculpted jawline. He turned fully toward her. "You're shaking," he said quietly. Not a question. A frighteningly accurate observation. Because of everything that just happened," Amara mumbled. Marcus asked, "Who is Caleb to you?" "My ex," she blurted out, as if throwing the truth far, far away. "We broke up." "He hurt you?" Also, not a question. Amara didn't answer. Her eyes shimmered with the remnants of tears. Marcus exhaled through his nose, his gaze darkening, as if her helplessness touched something buried deep inside him. "No one has the right to say those things to you," he said slowly. "No one. No matter who he used to be, the way he said you, soft but certain, sent a strange heat through Amara's body. Not reckless heat, a warmth that settled into her bones, making her want just a little more of his presence. She tried to push the sensation away and defended herself weakly. You really don't have to do anything for me. I just lost control for a few seconds. Marcus looked at her longer than necessary. Then he said gently, I won't bring it up again, but if it happens again, don't ask someone else. Call me. Amara blinked hard. But I don't have your number. That smile flickered again, sharper this time, masculine, a touch mischievous, yet warm enough to knock the air out of her lungs. You will, he replied simply. When they stepped back into the main hall, the familiar chaos rushed in, announcements blaring, rolling suitcases scraping the floor, laughter, train whistles. But Amara noticed something else. People were watching them. Some were filming. A young woman whispered to her friend, Oh my God, that's the guy who hugged her earlier. A curly-haired guy lifted his phone. Bro, they look like the main couple of a Netflix show. Marcus glanced sideways at Amara. She immediately lowered her head, cheeks flaming red all the way to her ears. All right, Marcus murmured. You need to get out of here. She meant to say, it's fine, but her legs were turning to jelly. Marcus tugged his long coat closer around him, toning down his dangerously striking looks, then held out his hand. Come on. Amara hesitated for 0.3 seconds, then placed her hand in his. And the moment their hands met, Amara felt, okay, not perfectly safe, but okay, enough to breathe, enough to move. That night, the video of Marcus wrapping his arms around Amara and saying, Baby, I'm late, was uploaded to TikTok by a 19-year-old student. 10 minutes later, 70,000 views. 30 minutes later, 300,000. 1 hour later, nearly 1 million. Text overlaid on the video, best couple of 2025? Comments, Dear God, I want a Marcus in my life. If no one does this for me, I'm suing the universe. Find this man's info ASAP. Then someone sharp-eyed noticed, Isn't that Marcus Hale, the reclusive billionaire? A few hours later, the hashtag Union Station Hero hit the top 3 trending in the US. The video racked up over 8 million views. But Amara didn't know, and Marcus didn't care. In that moment, when he stopped at the station entrance, turned to her and asked, Are you sure you can get home on your own? They were still strangers, tied together by a 7-second pretend embrace. Nobody knew those 7 seconds were about to change everything. The next morning, Amara woke up to the soft, honey-colored light of autumn, slipping through the old curtains and spilling over the faded cotton bedsheets. She hadn't even fully opened her eyes when the relentless buzzing of her phone beside her crawled into her sleep, as if the entire world had lined up outside her door, waiting for her to wake. At first, she thought it was just her alarm. But no, the phone kept vibrating over and over, so much that the mattress beneath her trembled. She reached blindly for the phone, eyelids still heavy, and the second the screen lit up, she shot upright like she'd been shocked. 43 messages, 17 missed calls, dozens of DMs. The group chat, Library Girls, is glowing red like a house fire. Amara's heartbeat skipped. The first message read, Amara, oh my God, you're on TikTok. The second, who are you dating? The third, what's with the public hug at Union Station? Amara whispered, No way. She opened TikTok, and the first video on her FYP was last night, her entire body vanishing inside the broad, warm arms of the stranger, the golden station lights reflecting in his gray eyes and his low, resonant voice. Baby, I'm late. Her throat tightened. The entire internet was reliving that moment from 100 different angles. One close-up showed his large hand on her back, another captured Caleb's stunned expression, and some videos were edited in slow motion with romantic music, making the scene look like a trailer for a newly released American drama series. Before she could process it all, a news headline flashed across her screen. Mystery man identified, Marcus Hale, the phantom billionaire. Amara froze. Marcus Hale. She read each word slowly, her heartbeat pounding painfully. According to the article, he was the CEO of Dominion Urban Development, a redevelopment and real estate empire stretching from coast to coast, a notoriously private billionaire who rarely appeared in public and never ever had romantic rumors attached to his name. And now, people were speculating that she was the mysterious woman who changed him. Amara felt the ground crack beneath her feet. She sat there in her tiny bedroom, staring at the photo of Marcus shielding her, an image so gentle yet powerful it could convince the whole world they truly belonged together. Then the phone buzzed again. This time it was the library. Mrs. Patterson, the manager. Strict, practical, allergic to drama. Amara swallowed and answered. Amara? Mrs. Patterson's voice carried equal parts concern and heaviness. Have you seen the video and the articles this morning? Yes, ma'am. The donors called very early. They're asking whether you're actually involved with Marcus Hale. The words knocked the breath out of her. No, I'm not, Amara blurted. I'm not dating anyone. I don't know him. I was just caught off guard. Everything happened too fast. Could you come to the library a bit earlier today? Mrs. Patterson spoke slowly, trying to remain calm. We need to talk, at least to know what to tell the media if they show up. Amara bit her lip. She nodded desperately, even though Mrs. Patterson couldn't see her. When she hung up, her tiny room suddenly felt suffocating. She pressed her palms to her face, forcing deep breaths. Everything was spinning, too fast, too loud, too far out of her control. Last night, all she needed was an arm around her shoulders. He had given her that without asking for anything in return. But now, the entire country was asking, who is she? People online were digging for her LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. One post even said, she's carrying a Brooklyn Public Library tote. Does anyone know her? Amara nearly dropped her phone. She scrambled to throw on a sweater, tie her hair back, grab her tote, and rush out the door, her mind still spiraling around the surreal truth that she'd been hugged by one of the most private men in America. And that moment was now sending millions of people into a frenzy. But beneath all the chaos, one thing was undeniable. When Amara remembered the way he looked into her eyes under the station lights, her heart softened. Weak, warm, and dangerously moved. She didn't know if she would ever see Marcus Hale again. She didn't know if he even remembered her. But one thing was certain. That moment last night had shifted the entire trajectory of her life. From the second Marcus Hale placed his hand on her back, she was no longer the Amara she'd been the day before. The building Amara lived in was the kind of aging New York apartment complex the city kept out of nostalgia rather than practicality. The awning creaked whenever the wind slipped through. The hallway lights flickered like they were on life support. In the elevator, on the good days, made people question whether they would end up stuck somewhere between the third and fourth floors. Amara pulled her thin sweater tighter around herself as she stepped into the elevator. She sighed. She wanted to go home, close the door, and forget TikTok, the messages, Caleb, and the man with the storm gray eyes. The doors slid shut, the weak yellow light casting a washed-out glow over her face, still beautiful in its exhaustion. She leaned her head back against the metal wall and closed her eyes briefly. Ting! The doors opened. A gust of cold hallway air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and old dust. And standing there, illuminated by the flickering light, was Marcus Hale. For a heartbeat, Amara's entire world slowed. Marcus wore a dark charcoal coat, collar turned up against the cold, his hair slightly tousled as if he had been waiting outside. The contrast between a man who clearly belonged to penthouse balconies and this peeling hallway of a rundown complex was so sharp it felt unreal, like a misplaced character from another world. He leaned casually against the wall, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone. The flickering hallway bulb cast a faint halo around his sculpted jawline. When he saw her, Marcus straightened, tucking the phone into his coat pocket. A small gesture, but deliberate, as though whatever he had come for had just arrived. Marcus? Amara whispered, half a question, half disbelief. What? What are you doing here? He stepped closer, his voice low and firm, his breath mingling with the cold air in a way that made a shiver trail down her spine. That video is turning your life upside down. I came to help. His tone held no pity, only a calm, unsettling certainty, as if chaos was something he handled before breakfast. She froze for a moment, then nodded faintly. "Come in," she murmured, pushing open her apartment door. The apartment was barely 35 square meters, yet somehow felt wondrously warm. Books were stacked neatly on wooden shelves, scented candles burned halfway down the tiny dining table, and the faint scent of vanilla mingled with the aroma of old wood, creating a cocoon of safety and something close to intimacy. Marcus took one slow sweep of the room, and his expression shifted, softened, almost imperceptibly. He did not seem accustomed to spaces this small, this lived in, this human. Yet instead of discomfort, there was something like ease. Amara took off her coat and set her bag down. "How did you find my address?" she asked. "The library lists employee addresses for partner access," Marcus replied, tone even. "No one else has it now. I made sure of that." Amara's eyes widened. "You protected my personal information?" "Yes," he said simply, "because you need protecting." A warmth ran down her spine so fast she almost forgot to breathe. She switched on a desk lamp. Gold light washed over her face, and Marcus, though subtle, tracked every movement, something unreadable flickering in the depths of his gaze. Amara curled up on her old armchair, hugging a pillow tight. "Where did all this come from?" she asked quietly. "I get the video, but the rumors, the fake articles, the threatening messages?" Marcus studied her for a moment, then stepped closer, resting one hand on the back of a nearby chair. "Caleb," he said, each syllable striking the room like metal on stone. "Last night after I saw you, I checked the sources. He sent messages, spread stories about you, gold digging, and targeting wealthy men. It escalated to a few headline-hungry reporters." Amara's hands balled into fists, pain tightening her chest. "Caleb, again!" Marcus leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. "I know that type. When they lose control, they'd rather burn down someone else's world than face their own failures." She stared at her palms as if answers might be written there. "I don't want to be hated," she whispered. "I just want peace. I want to help children read. I don't want to be hunted." Marcus slid into the chair across from her, the apartment so small their knees almost brushed. The candlelight caught her profile, setting her brown eyes aglow like polished amber. He spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I have a solution, but it's insane." Amara lifted her head, curiosity blooming despite herself. "How insane?" Marcus clasped his hands together, his gray eyes serious, not cold. "We pretend to date." 4 words detonated softly through the room, shattering its fragile stillness. Amara's lips parted, but no sound followed. Marcus continued, voice steady, as though he had already run through every angle. "You need protection. A public relationship with me gives the media a narrative they can't twist. And I—" He paused. Something softened in him. Unexpected. Startling. "I need a shield from the endless gossip about my personal life." Amara blinked, barely breathing. "You're saying that you and I would—" She swallowed. "But pretend to be in love?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, the barest curve at his lips. Not a smile, but close enough to change her pulse. "Only in public, on paper, on camera." Then with a tone that settled deep into her bones. "In real life, everything happens on your terms." Her breath snagged. "Why me? In your world, there must be women who fit better." Marcus answered instantly without flinching. "Because I believe you." 2 simple words. Yet when he said them, the tiny apartment seemed to expand, as if the walls themselves inhaled. Amara sat still, listening to her heart thudding against her ribs, hearing the wind whistle outside, catching the faint tremor of candlelight. She tried to speak, but Marcus leaned forward, not enough to cross boundaries, but near enough for her to smell cedar and something else. A warmth that didn't belong in a man built of shadows and restraint. "You don't have to go through this alone," he murmured. "If you let me, I'll stand in front and take the hit for you." Amara didn't know how to answer, didn't know whether to trust logic or the dangerous softness blooming inside her. But she knew one thing. Marcus Hale, under the golden flicker of candlelight, had opened a door she'd never imagined herself walking through, and part of her already wondered how it would feel to step inside. Amara stood in front of the mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the thin straps of her dress. The dress Marcus had sent that afternoon, placed inside a luxurious black box tied with a white ribbon, with no card or note, had taken her a full 10 minutes just to remember how to breathe again. It was a navy satin slip dress, gently fitted at the waist before falling in a soft, fluid line to her thighs, with a V-neck deep enough to be alluring yet still elegant, and a low back that revealed a delicate curve like water. Under the warm glow of her apartment's old yellow bulb, she looked like a queen stepped out of an oil painting. She wasn't used to feeling that way, but tonight, she had to admit the truth. Marcus Hale knew exactly what made a woman feel beautiful. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stood waiting in the lobby. He looked up, and Amara caught the moment he froze. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her for a long time, his gaze shifting from surprise to appreciation, then to something harder to read, as if he needed a few seconds to hide whatever he was thinking. "You," his voice dropped lower, "look better than anything I imagined." A simple sentence, yet warmth flooded her entire body. Tonight, Marcus wasn't wearing a suit. He'd chosen a fitted black shirt that hugged his shoulders, black trousers, and a long coat that framed him perfectly. A look both refined and slightly rebellious, the style of a man used to power but confident enough not to flaunt it. He offered his hand. "Shall we?" Amara's fingers trembled when she placed her hand in his, but when Marcus lightly closed his around hers, the tremor softened into pure warmth. Marcus took her to Aurelia, an upscale Italian restaurant in Midtown, where even the wine glasses gleamed like polished stars reflecting candlelight. The moment they stepped inside, the low hum of conversation seemed to slow. People turned their heads, not with casual curiosity, but with the kind of stare that said, "Who on earth are they?" Marcus walked beside her, tall and composed, as if this elegant place was merely a stage built to frame him. The host recognized him instantly, bowed slightly, and guided them to a window table, where the city lights washed over the vintage-style wood, and soft live violin music drifted from the corner like silk. Amara sat down, trying to hide how out of place she felt. Marcus tilted his head, lowered his voice. "Are you comfortable?" She let out a tiny laugh. "If I told you I'm a little overwhelmed, would you abandon me here and run?" The corner of Marcus's mouth lifted, one of those rare smiles that made him look a few years younger, and somehow much more dangerous. "I don't abandon anyone," he said, "especially not you." For the first time, she saw him truly gentle, not the cold CEO, not the billionaire the entire internet was hunting, just a man looking at her through candlelight. The violin rose in a delicate run of notes. She felt her heart soften. Marcus asked, "Do you come to places like this often?" Amara laughed. "The restaurant I go to the most is the $1 pizza place in Brooklyn. There, I can buy 2 slices and still have money left over for a cookie." Marcus's eyes brightened with genuine interest. "What kind of cookie?" "The worst, best kind," she said matter-of-factly. "The kind you regret immediately after you finish it." Marcus chuckled, a deep, warm sound that made a few nearby diners glance over with curiosity. "You're genuinely interesting," he said. "Interesting as in worth studying? Or mildly concerning?" she teased. "Interesting as in—" Marcus paused, his gaze deepening. "You make me want to hear more." One sentence, yet Amara suddenly felt her lips go dry. They talked about books, about Brooklyn, about her work at the library. Amara sprinkled in humor, gently poking fun at herself here and there, and Marcus watched her with an expression she didn't quite understand, half amused, half astonished that she made him laugh. So often. And the more she spoke, the more Amara realized Marcus wasn't cold at all. He was simply unaccustomed to opening up. But when he did, even slightly, the world inside him was so compelling, she wanted to reach out and touch it. Dinner flowed beautifully, until Amara caught a familiar silhouette walking into the bar behind them. Caleb. She stiffened instantly, her spine straightening like a drawn bow. Marcus noticed immediately. "What is it?" "Caleb, he's here," she whispered, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. Marcus turned his head, and at that exact moment, Caleb spotted them too. His expression flickered instantly, shock to surprise to anger to envy. Then Caleb walked toward their table, chest puffed up like he wanted to reclaim some sense of superiority. "Well, well," Caleb scoffed. "Didn't expect to see you two here. Amara, I saw the video. Congrats. You've upgraded." Amara didn't even have time to react. Marcus placed his hand on the table, right next to hers. Not rushed, not forceful. Just enough for Caleb to understand exactly where Marcus stood. Marcus spoke, his voice warm yet cutting like velvet wrapped around a blade. "She doesn't belong to your old world anymore." The tables nearby fell silent. Even someone who knew nothing of their history could feel the weight of those words, an entire warning condensed into one line. Caleb let out a short, sharp laugh. "And who exactly do you think you are?" Marcus straightened, eyes cold as forged steel. "Someone with enough influence to remove you from tonight entirely. Now return to your table before my patience actually runs out." Caleb opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus placed his hand over Amara's under the table and squeezed lightly, silently telling her, "I'm here." Amara met Caleb's eyes, and for the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt closure. Caleb saw their hands intertwined. His face went red, then green, then pale. Finally, he spun away, muttering something bitter. The tension slowly dissolved, and Marcus turned back to her, his hand never leaving hers. "Are you all right?" Amara nodded, exhaling softly. "Thank you." Marcus still didn't let go. He looked at her through the candlelit glow, his gray eyes unexpectedly warm. "I wasn't pretending when I said that," he murmured. "You truly don't belong to the world that hurt you anymore." And in that moment, with the candlelight flickering, the violin sighing, and his hand covering hers, Amara realized her heart had wandered far beyond pretending. Far, far beyond. The charity gala of the City Educational Development Foundation was one of the most luxurious events in New York, held at the Astoria Grand Hall, where crystal chandeliers cascaded like waterfalls of light, where the red carpet ran from the stone steps all the way into the grand foyer, and where every guest arrived dressed in their most extravagant attire, eager to dissolve into that golden sea. Amara stared at herself in the hotel mirror, placing a hand lightly on her waist as she turned. The dress she wore tonight, sent by Marcus that morning, had stolen her breath the moment she opened the box. A velvet red gown clung to her curves as though it had been tailored exclusively for her. One asymmetrical shoulder, a deep yet tasteful neckline, and a thigh slit stretching nearly to her hip. Every movement she made felt so sensuous her heart nearly burst out of her chest. Under the lights, the red velvet gleamed like liquid heart blood turned to fire. Soft makeup, brick red lipstick, her hair pinned loosely at the nape with tendrils falling along the smooth line of her collarbones. The reflection in the mirror was a woman she did not recognize. Not the girl Caleb mocked. Not the librarian living in an old apartment complex. Not someone who apologized for existing. But a goddess stepped out of a story Marcus never believed he would get to read. The hotel room door opened as she stepped out. Marcus stood there. Black tailored suit, silk black tie, hair slightly damp and brushed back. Those storm gray eyes darker than usual, like New York's sky just before a rainstorm breaks. And when he saw her, he froze. No blinking, no words and no movement. Just stared, as if the woman before him was a light too blinding for the rest of the world to survive beside her. Amara offered a tiny smile. "Are you all right?" Marcus inhaled, slow enough that it seemed he was recalibrating the entire rhythm of his body. "You," he said, voice so low her skin tingled, "are so beautiful. I don't know where to begin." It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't flirting. It was raw truth. So direct, Amara had to look away to hide the heat blazing across her cheeks. Marcus held out his hand. "Come with me." When their fingers touched, the heat was so intense she had to swallow hard. The moment Marcus and Amara entered the grand hall, The atmosphere shifted. People paused mid-conversation, champagne glasses lowered, dozens of eyes turned toward them. Marcus was used to it. Amara was not. Her heartbeat felt impossible to control. But Marcus leaned down, voice low enough for only her. "You all right?" Just that single question steadied her, as though an invisible thread tethered them together, letting her stand firm amid the ocean of gold light and curious glances. A middle-aged investor approached, shaking Marcus's hand before turning a calculating gaze toward Amara. "New girlfriend, Marcus. She looks intriguing." His tone held that subtle condescension reserved for sizing up anyone entering elite territory. Amara smiled, graceful, gentle, but sharp enough to leave a mark. "I'm not sure I'm as intriguing as whatever you're imagining," she said sweetly, "but I'm very good at finding the right books for people who enjoy asking difficult questions." Marcus's laugh slipped out, low, warm, barely contained, but unmistakable in his eyes. The investor blinked, then chuckled genuinely. "She's clever, Marcus." The night unfolded like that. Amara bombarded with questions. "What do you do for a living? How did you two meet? Are you used to environments like this?" And every time Amara responded with wit, charm, and a mischievous edge that left everyone impressed. "I work at a library, where everyone knows everyone's secrets, but no one speaks them aloud. Very similar to high society, just with fewer diamonds." "Am I used to this environment? Honestly, I'm not even used to these shoes." "How did we meet?" "Fate. The train arrived late, but Marcus didn't." The last answer made Marcus turn toward her. Eyes no longer neutral. Something sharper, deeper, warmer. It was strange. Galas were usually cold, pretentious, dripping with expectation. But through Amara, warmth seeped in. People laughed more, listened more, saw each other instead of status. An elderly woman giggled at Amara's stories about kids mispronouncing author names at the library. A group of young entrepreneurs clustered around her, enthralled by her plans for reading programs in Brooklyn. And Marcus watched her like he'd discovered something unnamed and devastatingly important. When Amara laughed, he laughed. When she spoke, he listened. When she leaned slightly closer to him because of the crowd, he placed a hand on her back with instinctive protectiveness, enough to stop her heart mid-beat. Each time she deflected probing questions with elegance, Marcus's gaze gained another layer of pride, disbelief, and something he was no longer trying to resist. Toward the end of the gala, the golden lights dimmed, and the band shifted into a slow melody, violin notes flowing like liquid silk through the room. Marcus turned to her. "Dance with me?" Amara halted, eyes wide. "I'm not very good at it." "Just follow me," Marcus said, extending his hand. "I'll take care of the rest." How was anyone supposed to refuse a sentence like that? She placed her hand in his. In a heartbeat, Marcus pulled her gently into him, his hand settling on her waist. Firm, warm, scorching through the red velvet. She rested her hand on his shoulder, looked up, and the rest of the world blurred. They moved slowly beneath the dim lights, their silhouettes merging into a single, perfect frame. Marcus lowered his chin near her ear, his breath brushing her skin, making her pulse skip. "Amara," he whispered, voice like silk sliding against silk, "pretend you feel this, so I'm not the only one." The words pierced the most fragile part of her heart. Her cheeks flamed. She wanted to sink into the marble floor. Her fingers tightened slightly on his jacket. Marcus let out the faintest laugh, like a kiss that hadn't landed yet. Her heartbeat no longer kept pace with the music. "Marcus," she whispered, struggling to sound steady. "Yes?" His voice dipped even deeper. Dangerous. "I do feel it." The tiny confession made Marcus tighten his hold at her waist, just enough that there was barely space left between them. The violin drew out a long note. Lights shimmered overhead, like rain made of gold. And in that moment, Amara understood. Pretending had never been this dangerous, and never this beautiful. The rain had already begun by the time they stepped out of the gala hall, heavy, weighted drops falling like a silver curtain across the New York night. Under the hazy glow of the streetlights, each raindrop slid along the velvet red fabric of Amara's dress, reflecting a deep, molten light that made Marcus tighten his grip slightly, fighting the urge to pull her into his arms right there on the marble steps. He held the umbrella over her, dipping his head a little lower to shield her from the wind. A stubborn raindrop slipped down Amara's neck, gliding along the soft curve of her skin before disappearing beneath the fabric. She shivered. Marcus saw it, and something flickered in those gray eyes, something he clearly struggled to restrain. The car was already waiting. He opened the door for her, shielding nearly her entire body from the rain. Amara stepped inside, heart racing so fast she couldn't tell whether it was from the beautiful gala, Marcus's gaze, or the fact that she was on her way to his penthouse. Maybe it was all of it. Neither of them spoke, but the silence didn't make the air tense. It made it rich, thick, as if woven from every emotion they were both too afraid to say out loud. Marcus sat beside her, one elbow resting against the door, the passing streetlights cutting across his face in dark, striking bands. His hair was slightly tousled from the rain and wind, making him look less like a CEO and more like a man. Dangerous, magnetic, too real. Amara snuck a glance. 3 seconds. 5. Each time he glanced back, she quickly turned away, but he still caught the way her ears turned red. Marcus let out a soft breath of laughter, quiet, deep, resonant. "What are you thinking?" he asked, still looking ahead. She bit her lip. "Nothing." "Nothing? Your ears are bright red." Amara frowned. "You don't have to be that observant." "I'm not observant," Marcus replied, adjusting his sleeve. "I'm just paying attention to you." The air inside the car warmed by several degrees, despite the cold rain lashing outside. The elevator doors opened. Amara held her breath. Marcus's penthouse wasn't the home of an ostentatious billionaire. It was spacious, minimalist. Glass, dark wood, black marble, and pools of soft golden light. The air carried faint scents of cedar and lightly roasted coffee, the scent of Marcus himself. Rain shattered into glowing streaks across the enormous glass walls. Below them, New York looked like an ocean of lights in perpetual motion. Amara stepped toward the window, fingertips brushing the cool surface. Staring at the dreamlike city below, she whispered, "It's beautiful." "I think so too," Marcus said. When she turned, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her, in the velvet red dress, with slightly damp hair and lips catching the light, as if she were the most beautiful thing in the entire skyline. Amara removed one of her hairpins. A few damp strands fell along her neck. Marcus swallowed. She heard it. Or maybe she only imagined the sound. But either way, it made her lose a few heartbeats. He walked closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body even through his rain-damp shirt. Marcus lifted his hand, slowly. His fingers traced the edge of her jaw, stopping exactly where the last raindrop still clung. Her skin shivered as if a current ran down her spine. "You're wet," he murmured. "Because of the rain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus gave a half smile. Not fully a smile, but enough to heat the entire room. "No!" His fingertip drifted down her neck. Slow, deliberate, wickedly gentle. So much that she had to grip his sleeve to stay steady. "Because of me?" Her breath hitched. Marcus leaned in. His breath brushed her lips, warm, heavy, making her chest tighten. She felt his hand settle on her waist, gently but firmly pulling her closer. Their lips were so close, a distance smaller than a breath. Amara's heart pounded painfully. "Amara!" Marcus's voice had dropped, rough, nearly undone. "If I kiss you now, nothing will be pretend anymore." She looked directly into his eyes. Marcus's gaze was no longer cold but deep, burning, dangerous enough to drag her under. She whispered, "Who said we're still pretending?" Marcus shut his eyes for a single second, as if her words shot straight through him. When he opened them again, it wasn't the look of a man simply protecting her. It was the look of a man who wanted her enough to shake his entire world. And he cupped her face with both hands, his voice dropping like fire. "Amara, you drive me insane." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling the fierce, uncontrollable rhythm of his heartbeat. Then, she breathed, stop trying to control it. Marcus didn't kiss her immediately. He moved slowly, so slowly she thought she might faint from waiting. He brushed his lips first against the corner of her mouth. A barely there kiss, light but burning enough to make her head spin. Then he trailed down her cheek, along her jawline. Each touch made her tremble. Marcus, she gasped, fingers clutching his shoulder. I know, he whispered back, voice hoarse, his lips grazing her ear. I feel it too. She turned her face toward him, and this time, the kiss happened. No hesitation, no distance. He kissed her deep, slow but strong enough to make her knees weaken. One hand held her waist, the other slid up her back, pulling her against him as if letting go would make everything disappear. She kissed him back, not shy anymore, but with the same longing she had buried for so long. The kiss was sweet, hot, beautiful, and dangerous. It was not the kiss of a performance. It was the kiss of two people who had crossed an entire world to find each other on one rainy night. Marcus paused only to breathe, resting his forehead against hers, both of their breaths colliding like waves. No more pretending, he whispered. Not with you. Amara pressed her lips to his again, this time initiating it, making him grip her harder, as if to keep from lifting her off the floor. She murmured against his lips, I don't want to pretend anymore either. Marcus let out a soft laugh, a dangerous, warm, meaningful sound. In that case, he lifted her effortlessly, eyes burning like flame. Tonight, let me love you for real. And with the rain whispering against the glass, the city lights pouring down like melted gold, they fell into each other into a night where the line between truth and pretense, reason and desire, blurred completely. Between the man who carried New York in his hands and the woman who, for the first time, made his world tremble. The morning after the night at the penthouse, Amara returned to her small apartment in Brooklyn. The rain had stopped, yet the cold air still clung to her skin. Everything that had happened between her and Marcus last night lingered warmly in her chest. A soft, breathtaking afterglow that made her smile whenever she replayed it in her mind. Marcus had to fly out for business that afternoon. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead before leaving, his hand cupping her cheek as if afraid he might forget the shape of her face. I'll be back as soon as I can, he said. She nodded, her heart tightening in a way she didn't dare analyze too deeply. She thought today would be peaceful, but she forgot one brutal truth. The past can destroy even the most beautiful future in a single second. Amara had barely hung her coat when her phone started vibrating nonstop. Messages, emails, DMs from usernames she didn't recognize. That's weird, she murmured, opening a random message, and her world cracked open. Gold-digging, uneducated tramp pretending to be innocent. You used Caleb, and now you're after a billionaire? Trash like you just leeches off rich men. She got fired once for scamming people. Amara froze. She opened the internet, and the nightmare unfolded: articles, videos, photoshopped images, fabricated documents, an entire smear campaign. At the top, bold and vicious, Amara Rivas, the gold digger trying to trap billionaire Marcus Hale? She stumbled backward, her hands shaking as though scalded. The air thickened. The room spun. Her breath fractured. No, this can't be happening. That's not me. I didn't do anything. She opened another article, her second mistake. Sources say Amara once lived off her ex-boyfriend. Repeatedly manipulated him, faked illness to borrow money. Attempted to threaten Caleb Palmer after he tried to leave. Caleb's name appeared over and over like a poisoned thorn stabbing straight into her heart. Amara's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. She collapsed onto the chair, clutching her head. Caleb. He's doing this. Again. She shook uncontrollably. Some pain never dies. It waits, and the moment one memory cracks open, it floods back in full force. Caleb had once made her believe she was worthless, incapable of living without him, had called her a leech, had used love like a rope tightening around her throat. And now, he was doing it again, publicly, cruelly, without restraint. Amara covered her face, tears splattering onto the wooden floor. Marcus, if he sees this, what will he think? That was the fear that truly crushed her. He was traveling. She didn't want to disturb him, didn't want him to think she was trouble, didn't want everything beautiful between them last night to become an illusion. Would he believe her? Or would he believe the world? Her heart physically hurt with the question. Her phone rang, the library, her blood turned to ice. Miss Amara, we regret to inform you that you are temporarily suspended while we investigate the allegations circulating online. The manager's voice was soft but cold, distant in a way Amara had never heard before. I'm sure you understand our position. The library relies on donations from major patrons. Reputation is crucial. We cannot let these rumors jeopardize our institution. But none of this is true, Amara sputtered. We will review everything, the voice replied, curt and final. The call ended. The final beep stabbed her chest like a blade. She whispered, voice breaking, "No, please, not my job. Please." Everything shattered in one heartbeat. She no longer cried silently. She sobbed, raw, ragged, as if pain had hollowed her out. Amara slid onto the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. "No one believes me. No one." Another sob. "Marcus, do you believe me?" Her tiny apartment felt colder than winter. Didn't she know how long she sat there? 10 minutes. An hour. Outside, the rain began again. She didn't realize she was shaking, curled into herself like someone trying to disappear. Then knock, knock, knock. Amara jolted, her heart seizing. She wiped her tears in vain, tried to stand, but her legs nearly failed her. "Amara," his voice. "Marcus." She froze, hand covering her mouth. No, impossible. He was traveling. She ran to open the door. Marcus stood there, coat soaked from the rain, hair disheveled, breath uneven as if he had run all the way up the stairs. His eyes, and those storm gray eyes, were filled with something she had never seen so clearly. Fear, rage, and heartbreak for her. His voice dropped so deep it undid her completely. "Amara, God, what happened?" "I got on the earliest flight back. I couldn't wait another second." She fell into his arms. No words, just collapse. Marcus wrapped her close, fiercely, protectively, as if his body alone could shield her from the world. He ran a hand through her hair, voice cracking with a fury he barely contained. "I saw the news. I know it's all lies. Do you hear me?" Amara sobbed harder, clutching his jacket. You don't believe any of it, right?" Marcus lifted her face between his hands, his eyes blazing. "Not for 1 second. Not ever. I know exactly who you are." Her whole body trembled. Marcus pulled her against him again, so tightly she could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat against her ribs, his voice iron and fire. "Let me fight for you. Stop fighting alone." Outside, the rain poured harder, as if the sky itself was bearing witness to his vow. And Amara, in the arms of the man she once thought needed no one, felt for the first time that she wasn't just protected. She was chosen, she was believed, she was loved. The morning after the rainy night, when the first sunlight slipped through the blinds of Amara's small apartment, Marcus had already been up for hours. He moved quietly so he wouldn't wake her. She was curled up on the tiny sofa, her face still carrying the exhaustion and panic of someone who had endured far too much in far too little time. The sight made something tighten painfully in his chest, as if each breath she took placed an invisible weight on his heart. In his hand, his phone buzzed nonstop with new notifications. Smear posts multiplying by the second, fake documents spreading to 3 more news outlets, a fabricated interview being reposted dozens of times, every one of them aimed directly at Amara, at her dignity, at the job she had poured her heart into. Marcus stood there for a single moment, staring at the poison-black words. Then his spine straightened, and his face turned so cold that even the morning light seemed unable to touch it. No swearing, no sharp exhale. Just Marcus Hale shifting into combat mode. He stepped away from the sofa, slipped on his coat, pushed his slightly messy hair back, and the moment he stepped into the dim hallway of the old apartment building, he called the head of legal, his voice low, fast, and sharp like a freshly honed blade. In 30 minutes, the entire team will be in the building, no exceptions. He didn't wait for a reply before making the second call. Prepare a press conference before noon. I'll speak myself. The third, gather everything on Caleb Palmer, accounts, transactions, connections, any illegal activity. I want all of it. Today. His voice was deep, quick, and gave no one a chance to ask why. Because in that moment, Marcus resembled a storm that knew its exact path, speed, and what it would destroy along the way. And the only person he intended to protect was the girl sleeping just a few feet away. She woke with a start, hands trembling, heart racing wildly as if the nightmare had followed her all the way into morning. And the first thing she saw wasn't her phone, wasn't yesterday's venomous comments. It was Marcus standing in the corner of the room, one hand holding his laptop, the other holding a steaming cup of coffee, his expression so focused that the entire space felt as silent as a library after closing. You haven't left for work yet? Her voice was hoarse, fragile, a hairline crack. Marcus turned, walking toward her with long, sure strides. I left, and came back, and I'll leave again. There's a lot to handle. It's about me, isn't it? The question hung between them, fragile as a single thread. Marcus set the laptop on the table, sat beside her, and rested his large hand on her knee. Warm, steady. Amara, you were publicly defamed. They're throwing the filthiest tools the media has at you. You're injured, you've lost your job, you haven't slept, and you're still asking if this has to do with you. She lowered her head, lips trembling, not from his words, but from the old fear Caleb had carved into her over their 2 years together. I'm scared you might doubt me. Marcus exhaled sharply, not the kind meant to show irritation, but the kind a man makes when he's suppressing a fury not aimed at her, but at the person who had made her this afraid. He lifted her chin, forcing her gaze to meet his. If I doubted you, I wouldn't have held you all night to keep you from breaking. I wouldn't have mobilized the entire legal team at 5 in the morning. I wouldn't be preparing a press conference just to tell the whole city you did nothing wrong. Amara's eyes widened. Press conference? Why a press conference? Marcus stood, shrugging his coat back on. His face, cold, sharp, breathtaking, made her forget to breathe. Because I'm going to speak to the press, directly, in front of everyone, and I want you beside me. Marcus, I can't. You won't have to do anything, he cut in, taking her hand, gentle but resolute. Just stand with me. Just let me protect you properly. The front plaza of Hale Industries was packed with reporters. Flashing lights burst like lightning before a storm. But when Marcus walked out with Amara, she in a thin coat, hair hastily tied, eyes still showing traces of a sleepless night, the noise seemed to slow, as if the very air stretched tight around their arrival. Marcus walked straight to the podium. No notes, no mic check, no waiting. He placed a hand on Amara's back like an anchor, steadying her, then spoke, voice deep, rapid, unwavering. The accusations against Amara Levy are fabricated, malicious, and coordinated. We have collected evidence and will submit it all to the authorities today. Everyone involved will be held accountable. The room erupted in whispers, but Marcus didn't stop, didn't slow. But the reason I'm here today is not just to defend a colleague or a victim. He turned toward Amara, his gaze pulling her into a world where only the two of them existed. The reason I'm here is because I love her. The entire room exploded. Flashlights fired like white snowfall. People shouted questions. Hands shot up. Chaos swarmed. Amara froze. The hand he was holding felt too warm, too real, too impossible to dismiss as pretend. Yet her heart expanded and contracted painfully at the same time, because the old fear still clung to her. Did he say it because he truly loved her, or because she was being crushed by the world? Marcus faced the crowd, eyes sharp with a fury that could cut steel. And I will destroy anyone who tries to harm her. Amara heard every shout, every gasp, every camera lens aimed at them. But the loudest sound was still her own heartbeat, panicked and aching, unsure what was real, what was obligation, what was for her, and what was for the world watching. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from pain, but because she no longer knew what to believe. Marcus tightened his grip on her hand, leaned down and whispered just for her, "Look at me, Amara. Everything I said was for you." But her heart still hesitated, not because his confession lacked sincerity, but because she had once been loved the wrong way before, and she wasn't sure she could survive another fracture. That night, when New York had fallen into the fragile stillness that only arrives after days of media storms, Amara sat alone on her worn-out couch, her oversized sweater draped over her shoulders, making her look smaller than usual. The dim amber glow from the streetlight outside filtering through the window and settling on her cheekbones like a veil of golden dust. Just enough light to hide the redness still lingering in her eyes after an entire day spent pretending to be strong. And she truly thought this night would end just like that, quiet and suspended between fear and hope, until there was a knock at the door. So soft, so slow, like a man trying very hard not to break it down because he was in too much of a hurry. Amara stood up, her chest tightening, her fingertips trembling slightly on the doorknob as she turned it. And Marcus stood there, not in a suit, not in his long coat, but simply himself, wearing a black-fitted t-shirt that traced the lines of his broad frame, his hair tousled from the night wind, his storm-gray eyes darker than usual from lack of sleep, and something else. Something deeper, heavier, almost dangerous. Something that made her take half a step back, as if her heartbeat understood what was about to happen before her mind could catch up. It was just him, standing at her door like a man who had let every wall around his heart collapse. "Marcus!" She breathed his name, barely audible. He didn't answer immediately. He stepped inside instead, closed the door behind him, and leaned against it, looking at her with an expression that made her want to cry, simply because it was too real, too unguarded, too different from Marcus Hale, the untouchable CEO the world had been obsessing over for the past 3 days. "I tried to wait until morning," he said, voice raw, breath uneven as though he had run halfway across Manhattan. "But I couldn't." Amara froze, her pulse pounding so hard her ears rang. Marcus took a step toward her, slow but resolute, and with each step he took, it felt like he was pulling the air out of the room. "I thought—" He paused, closing his eyes for a brief second, as though he was wrestling down the iron grip of self-control, the very foundation of the man he had always been. "I thought I could keep my distance, give you space, let you steady yourself." He opened his eyes and they burned into her. "Yeah, but I've lost control." Her heart tightened, painfully and sweetly at the same time. Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping lower, deep enough that the room seemed to contract around it. "I lost control when I saw you crying in the rain." One more step. "I lost control when I watched them tear your name apart." Another step, barely 2 handspans left between them. "I lost control when you looked at me, as if you believed I might think any of those filthy lies were true." Amara clasped her hands together, voice trembling. "Marcus, I—" He closed the final distance, standing right in front of her, his breath brushing her cheek, his voice nothing short of a dangerous confession. "I lost control because I am in love with you, truly, completely." It wasn't a sentence crafted for the media. It wasn't a strategy to shield her from the world. It was the voice of a man stating a truth he had tried to bury for far too long. Amara felt something detonate inside her chest. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her eyes shimmered like emotions that had been damned for days were finally breaking free. And when Marcus lifted his hands, slowly cupping her face, his fingers warm and feather-light, that touch seemed to ask one question without words. "Do you believe me?" Amara couldn't hold herself together anymore. A sob tore out of her, and she threw herself into his arms. With such force that Marcus stumbled back a step, his hands instinctively locking around her waist as though he had just caught something precious and irreplaceable. "Marcus," she choked out, voice shaking. "I was terrified you would say those words to everyone else." But not to me. He held her tighter, his chin resting against her hair, his voice low enough to feel like a vow whispered to the universe. I'm saying them to you now. Only to you. There is no one else. Amara lifted her face, cheeks wet, lips parted on ragged breaths. Marcus looked at her, and there was nothing left hidden in his gaze. It was deep, fierce, hungry, tender, unrestrained. A man stripped of every armor, wanting her with an honesty that made her entire body burn. Then slowly, deliberately, as though afraid a sudden movement would scare her away, he placed his hand on her hip, pulled her closer, and lowered his head. The kiss arrived like a storm that had been caged too long. Hot, deep, consuming, not rushed but devastating in its intensity. A confession, an apology, a promise he did not yet know how to fulfill, but understood he would never break. The streetlight spilled through the window, falling across his back, threading through her hair, turning them into silhouettes tangled together in molten gold, like the final scene of a movie you never wanted to end. The kiss didn't stop quickly. It deepened, until the cold floor beneath her feet, the outside world, the rumors, the pain, the fear, all of it vanished, leaving only his mouth claiming hers, his hands anchoring her to him, as if he let go, he would lose the one thing he had been trying not to need. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, foreheads pressed together, their exhales mingling in the charged stillness of the room. Marcus whispered, voice rough, molten, heartbreakingly soft. Amara, I love you so much I can't come back to you. Not even in the middle of the night, not after the battle, not after losing control. And Amara smiled through tears, the kind of smile a person gives only to someone they've chosen to trust again. Then, don't take control back. And with those words, the night stopped being a refuge from chaos. It became the moment everything finally, irrevocably changed. A quiet morning, just a few weeks after the legal battle ended. As the city slowly regained its usual rhythm and the news outlets began to loosen their grip on sensational headlines, Amara sat by the window of her small apartment, watching the soft sunlight spill over the red brick rooftops of Brooklyn. For the first time in months, her heart felt light. So light she thought a single touch might make it lift into the crisp, early spring breeze, because the investigation had finally concluded. Every document had been proven fake, every accusation dismantled, all of it traced back to Caleb, driven by jealousy that Amar had left him and now had a billionaire lover. He had colluded with several dirty sources to fabricate the entire smear campaign. The truth was laid out clearly, leaving no room for doubt. Caleb was indicted, his name printed openly in the prosecutor's report, and when the news broke, Amara didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. She felt only a gentle, quiet emptiness, as she had finally set down a stone she had carried so long, she once believed it was part of her body. The day she received the message from the library, her reinstatement, along with a formal apology from the board, and something else that made her sit down to breathe, she reread the email 3 times before she believed it. We would like to invite you to become our community reading program manager. She laughed through tears, remembering the days she nervously held her job application, the nights she stood in the children's aisle, arranging boxes of crayons, the tiny dream she once had of helping someone read their very first book, the dream Caleb mocked, called naive, belittled until she wondered if she was too small to make anything big. Now, not only had that dream been restored, it was being expanded into something she never dared imagine. And Marcus. Marcus was the man standing at her door that day, still in his suit after 2 back-to-back meetings, but with eyes so soft she wanted to hug him before thinking of anything else. He stepped inside, removed his coat, set his phone on the table like the world outside mattered less than seeing her smile. When do you start? He asked, voice low, with a hint of unrestrained joy that made her laugh. Next week, she said, and that alone was enough to make his face brighten in a way that warmed her entire chest. Then he pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her waist, lowering his forehead to hers, his breath warm and deep like slow jazz, drifting from a street corner. Then this week, he whispered, we build something else. She raised a brow. Build what? Marcus smiled, that small, knowing smile that held more meaning than words. A reading center for Brooklyn. And just like he promised, she stood beside him the following week. When he presented the project at City Hall, when he spoke to the council about the importance of reading, when he bent down to show her model sketches, asking with rare sincerity for a powerful CEO, "Do you think the outdoor reading area should use wood or steel?" She doubled over laughing. "I'm not an architect." "You're the heart of this project," he replied softly, as if stating a fact. The reading center was approved in just 2 weeks, partly because of Marcus, partly because Amara's story made Brooklyn rally behind her. Families held small signs reading "Books Save Lives" at the hearings. Children drew pictures of Amara reading to them, and she cried on Marcus's shoulder when she saw her name printed on the large project board. Director, Amara Levy. Through every moment, Marcus stood beside her, sometimes a few steps behind so she could have the spotlight, sometimes gently pulling her forward to remind her, "You're not as small as you think." 2 months later, on a honey gold afternoon, they stood on the empty lot where the reading center would soon rise. Wind played with Amara's hair. Marcus stood with arms crossed, watching workers lay the first steel frames, and she instinctively slipped her hand into his. He clasped it immediately, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You know," she said softly, as if confessing a secret, "life after the storm, it feels strange." Marcus turned to her, gray eyes holding her entirely in the warm sunset glow. "But we're rebuilding," he replied, "and this time stronger." She smiled, a smile that made him lean down to press a kiss to her temple, slow and gentle, but powerful enough to make her heart tremble just like the first time he touched her at Union Station. A few more months passed, and all of New York knew them now. The warm power couple, the couple who never acted powerful, the couple who showed up at major events, but also held hands while grocery shopping at 11 p.m. The couple who could sign million-dollar contracts in the morning, but spent the afternoon reading books with children in the park. Marcus, whose gray eyes were once described as cold, now softened every time he watched Amara read to kids. Amara, who once trembled under threats, now stood tall, speaking before hundreds with a warm voice people wanted to hear more of. They grew from old wounds, but built their future on something entirely new, something they chose together. And in a moment almost no one witnessed, as the sunset fell over Brooklyn, Marcus stood behind Amara, wrapped his arms around her waist, and pressed a kiss to her shoulder. His breath brushed her skin with a promise simpler than vows, yet deeper than any declaration. "We survived the storm. Now it's time to live something beautiful." Amara leaned back into his chest, lips curling into a grateful smile. "Life is beautiful, and I'm glad you're here in it." That evening, when Amara stepped out of the elevator onto the rooftop of the Hale building, she almost stopped breathing. The scene before her blazed to life. Hundreds of candles lined the walkway, their tiny flames flickering in the night breeze, mingling with the sound of a piano playing somewhere nearby. A gentle, floating melody that felt like it had been composed solely for her heart. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline glowed, skyscrapers reflecting light back into the sky, turning the entire rooftop into a dream curated with painstaking precision. Marcus stood at the end of the path, hands in his pockets, his hair tousled by the wind, the top button of his white dress shirt undone, revealing the strong line of his collarbone. And when he looked up, those gray eyes, the same ones that once made people tremble, softened so completely that Amara thought her heart might dissolve right there. He walked toward her, took her hand in his warm, steady grip like an anchor, and pulled her into the arms she had come to know. Yet every time they enveloped her, they felt overwhelming, brand new. He kissed her. Not a greeting, not a gentle brush of lips, but the kiss of a man who had waited far too long to say what he truly felt. A kiss so deep it made the New York night seem to swirl around them. A kiss so long that even the wind seemed to pause just to witness it. Marcus slowly released her lips, holding her face between his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks as though memorizing every line. "Amara," he said, voice low enough to vibrate through her, "the first night I held you at Union Station, I thought I was helping a stranger, but I was wrong. You were never a stranger. You're the person who made me find myself again." He stepped back, and before Amara could fully breathe, Marcus was already kneeling, one knee pressed against the cool stone floor, the candlelight throwing gold across his face and making his gray eyes impossibly deep. "This isn't pretend," he said, each word slow and weighted like a vow. "This isn't to protect you. This isn't for the media or the world." He opened a black velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple, exquisite, the diamond shining like a drop of captured starlight stolen from the skyline behind him. "It's because I need you to live fully." He lifted his gaze, heart bare, no armor left. "Amara Levy, will you marry me?" Amara pressed her hand to her mouth as tears spilled instantly, not from shock, but from the overwhelming realization that life had finally chosen to be gentle with her. She nodded, once, then faster, then laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Marcus stood, pulled her into his arms, and the kiss they shared was filled with everything they had survived: the pain, the fear, the hope, and a love so deep it no longer needed hiding. And just as their lips met, the sky behind them erupted. Fireworks soared from the river, reflecting across the glass towers, showering them in shimmering stardust, turning their kiss into the most beautiful scene New York witnessed that night. A few weeks later, they held a small, warm wedding in the garden behind the Reading Center, children running around, golden lights scattering like stardust, Marcus holding Amara's hand as if he would never, ever let go. And he didn't.